This is a conversation with Gautam Goenka. He's the co-founder and artistic director of the Junction Theatre and president of H72 Productions, one of the largest community theatre groups in Dubai. He's an actor, director, producer, writer, and learning and talent development leader. He's also the grandson of Padma Bhushan recipient Dr. S.N. Goenka, one of the world's most renowned teachers in Vipassana meditation. In this conversation, we discuss theatre, the impact of a live audience, whether great work is inspired from great suffering, acting, writing, directing, and also Vipassana meditation. This is No Time. If you like what you see, then do hit subscribe on
YouTube, follow on Spotify, and rate 5 stars on Apple.
Podcast. This project continues to take a lot of my time, money, and effort. So if you'd like to see it continue, do consider making a small donation on Patreon. And thank you to the two people who have already done so. For other forms of love and support, you can follow this channel on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, you name it, or you can follow me personally. And now, no matter, it is no time. In the play As You Like It, William Shakespeare once said that all the world's a stage and all men and women are merely players.
True.
They have their exits and entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. Do you view it this way? Do you think life is just one giant theatre?
I'd like to think so. Yeah. And you can play multiple parts, so I completely agree. I think it's been true for me.
Has it come to an extent where if someone new enters your life or a certain event happens in your life, you start thinking from a theatre perspective, oh, this is where the script demands, or this is where the narrative is?
I've not gone that crazy yet.
But has it happened at times? Like, does it seep into?
I mean, you can see when people have entered and exited my life. So I can see it. And it feels like it's another scene change. It's another act change.
How they're driving my narrative forward. Yeah.
So, I mean, you do need to be a little crazy to get involved with theatre. So that element of craziness does come in.
Great advice for people who want to get into theatre.
True.
Just be crazy.
A little bit. You need it.
Do you remember how you started getting to theatre? How did the first love, when did it start?
So look, I did my schooling here in Dubai, and in school we used to do a lot of theatre. So I was here at Modern High School, what's now known as GEMS Modern Academy, and we used to do a lot of theatre. So we were used to seeing a lot of musicals, doing a lot of theatre at young age. Kevin Oliver, quite well known in the Dubai circles.
Everyone at our own high school knows him really well.
Yeah, and Modern and any of the kids who are part of the GEMS group.
Yes.
So watched a lot of his plays, been part of one or two of them. And so when I was 17, a career counselor kind of recommended I get into filmmaking. Now, coming from a very conservative business house, I told her that, listen, my father's going to shoot me first and then come looking for you. So suggest something else. And she was kind enough to decide to sit with my mother and told her that, okay, you don't want to let him go into filmmaking, at least let him do some theatre. And she said, okay. And we landed up at an audition for a community play that was happening. William Shakespeare's Othello. And it was Shankar directing it. It was under a group at that point that was around called Samarpan. Okay. Auditioned, got a role. I was playing Rodrigo. And I had a ball of a time. We rehearsed for 4, maybe 6 months. And I was the baby of the cast. I was 17. Everybody else was much older. And I learned so much that when I went to university, I found a lack of theatre. So I kind of went, hey, I joined the American University in Dubai. And I remember turning to Shankar, my first director, and going, there's no theatre happening here. What do I do? And he said, build it. You do it. So I'm not a director. He said, who says you need a stamp? Who says you need a degree? You saw me direct? And I went, yeah. He said, just do it. Same thing. And one thing led to another. Started up the theatre group there and I started directing. And that's when the passion for directing kind of bit me. So I started off as an actor, but became a director.
How were you in your first play?
How was I? I mean, my evaluation,
Yeah.
I thought, if I look back now, it's terrible. I had this mustache growing that would curl at the edges, the awkward teen years.
Yeah, sure. So I'm still going through those.
So yeah, I thought it was terrible. But if I evaluate myself as a 17-year-old, as a director, if I sit back and evaluate, I'll go, yeah, okay, for a 17-year-old, that wasn't bad.
Terrible in what sense? Like, were you hamming it? Were you idealistic?
No. I felt I could have done a lot more. I never did much character study,
Right.
beyond the point. Half the things the director was telling me at that point to how to get into character went over my head. For me, it was just get in there, switch on, and just do it. I mean, why do people need to think so much about it? So I never understood the importance of homework back then. Clearly, being in school, homework was not one thing that I was interested in.
Interesting you mentioned this because you've spoken in the past that now the Junction performers and the audience is largely very young.
Yeah.
And the actors that come in these days, just, I mean, they seem so worldly wise and they seem so trained.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I started off, this was pre-internet days, right?
Yeah.
So, oh my God, I'm giving away my age. But yeah, I mean, there was no access to information. But you run into actors today, you run into newcomers today, they've got access to so much information. If they need to see a video on how do I understand the ethos of this play, they'll get 10 different perspectives on it from around the world. They'll get 10 different interpretations of a script. They can pick, choose. They can get into classes and courses free of cost online, which will help them. So yes, they definitely come in with a lot more knowledge, a lot more exposure, but the world is a lot more tougher for them because the competition is much higher. When I was doing theater, we were doing in Dubai about 2 plays a year. Now there's about 20, 30, 40 plays a year happening, but all the directors want the best actors. And so, that needs work.
You're someone who's seen the evolution of this field. You've been here for more than 30 years. First question is, are you tired of people coming up to you and saying, oh, I didn't know Dubai had a good theater scene. Or until I saw your play, I thought it was all shit.
Well, not shit per se, but people come and tell you, I never knew there was a scene existing. And I'd go, do you have Google? I mean, it's you just Google Dubai and theater and it'll pop up. Yeah. But I mean, it's not surprising to me. That is a very common question. And I get it. It's a transient society. Dubai has a transient nature. People come, people go. You get a large expat population. They hear majority for a couple of years and then they're going back to another place. And sometimes they miss to see things. And then because of the nature of Dubai, we love everything king sized, right? Supersized, king sized, just bring the best. So people don't realize that there's a whole underbelly of this grassroots scene that's around. There's this entire different side to the city because they think all of Dubai performances are just bring the best of West End and Broadway over. And it's all, big glamorous shows where you got to dress up and that's it. There's nothing else that's happening. No, there's a very vibrant theater scene that's in the city. There are very talented actors that are coming out of the scene. Some of them are taking it up professionally. So that is surprising to people. And I don't blame them completely for it. It's because the image the city portrays is one where people kind of feel like there must not be anything else.
Right. Sorry, we took a digression. So you were talking about how you started getting to plays in college. I believe, I'm not sure if this is in the right spot in the timeline, but one of the early plays that you were involved in was an adaptation of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie.
And Then There Were None.
Yeah. And in what happened in that play was, I think in the final scene, there were 2 new actors and they ended up dropping the prop
gun. Where did you get that story from?
I've hired a team.
You've done your research. Yes, that's true.
I've hired a team in Russia actually to do my research for this. So just to set the context for people who don't know is that in the final scene, the woman was supposed to shoot the man.
Yep.
And the prop they were supposed to use a gun. She ended up dropping it and it broke into pieces.
It did.
And
which had not happened in any rehearsal, any run-up, any of the previous shows.
Right.
It happened on night 2.
And what they ended up doing was on the spot, they invented a completely different ending in which the man then ends up killing the lady. So what I want to check with you is, okay, this is a bit of an extreme example, but
yeah, it is an extreme, but it's true. It happens.
Let's assume that everyone follows the script exactly and everyone does exactly what they did in the rehearsal. If I do watch a play on 2 consecutive nights back to back, would I have a different experience?
You could. It's a live medium. In fact, I would say very much you would. Because look, for theater to go on, good theater to happen, you need the actors, you need the script, and you need the audience. The audience is different every night. The actors are human beings. They're not robots. They're going to react differently from an audience perspective. They're going to react differently from a co-actor's perspective. Yes, As a director, I'd like nothing better than standardization. This is my vision. Bring it out exactly. Don't change a movement or a muscle. But I know that I'm dealing with live people and things will change. Moments change. People come in, they react differently. You'll get actors coming backstage going, the vibe of the audience today was not great. And that affects their performance. Oh, the vibe of the audience today was excellent. I loved the audience. I was firing on every cylinder. So it does happen. And you want, as they become more professional with this, that the audience to them doesn't matter. They can deliver that consistently. But as you work in community theater, you start realizing, yeah, the audience matters to them. So it does differ. Now, does it differ? Does it swing from left to right? No, not that much. You'll see small variations.
Do you give them the freedom? Let's say if an audience is more receptive to jokes, and give them the freedom to maybe exaggerate the jokes
No.
a bit more? No.
That is a big no-no in my books.
Right.
You don't do that. And I say this to all actors straight up. I said, if you're playing for the audience, then you're doing something wrong. That is hamming it up. Right. And I know there's a school of theater that does that, but that's not my school of theater. My belief is we've prepared something. We're going to put it up the way we think it's right. We've debated, discussed it in rehearsals. We've gone ahead and explored every facet of it. Now, when you're putting it up, you put it up. And if people find it funny, you can take a slight pause for the laughter to die down so that your next line is not eaten up. But you're moving on. You're not stretching and pulling that moment. It's done what it's supposed to have done.
Right. I would love to explore this many interesting points you mentioned. So let's explore the live audience part first.
Yeah.
And there's an incident that comes to my mind. So I think in the first week of the Junction, I believe in the middle of a play, someone went and switched off the power. And everything, there was a complete blackout.
That was the second month. So somebody from Diva, not blaming Diva, but somebody from Diva was supposed to come at midnight to, Al Sarkar Avenue was expanding. Sure. And the new part of the avenue, which is Junctions in, was getting more power upgrades and new lines. And I think Diva was supposed to come in at midnight. And we had gotten notice they'll come at midnight. And I think somebody decided that they had time, so they'd just go 2 hours earlier, and it's 10 p.m. So, what could be going on now at 10 p.m.?
Go home earlier. Yeah.
All the businesses must be shut down. So we were in the climax of the play, and it was it was very interesting. It was Ibsen's. It was an Ibsen play. I'm forgetting the name right now, but it was the climax of the play and Pillars of Society. Ibsen's Pillars of Society, and suddenly everything just goes blank. I looked over to the tech booth, and the tech guy's like, everything's gone. And the lights are gone. And I was like, house lights? And house lights are gone. Nothing's going on. And I immediately got up, fumbled my way, went outside. Everything's dark. Went outside onto the avenue. Everything's dark. I was like, load shedding in Dubai after so many years? I mean, I've experienced it somewhere in the 90s when I was, early 90s. And it turned out somebody had switched off just the main of the entire avenue. By the time we ran over, switched it on. But here's where the community came into play. It was one of the most magical moments. The actors did not stop. They incorporated the darkness into their scene. The audience did not realize that something wrong had happened. And one audience member took out their phone, switched on the light, and went onto the stage. And soon you had 150 lights on stage. And it was one of the most magical scenes. And the actors did the entire scene. And as they were taking their curtain call, because that was the climax scene, as they were taking the curtain call, as they bowed, the lights came back up because we got to the power guy. The audience was none the wiser. They thought that was an artistic incorporation into the play. Because the moment of the play was also this individual's life was going down so into the depths of depravity that it almost appeared like, even the lights in his house are gone. Even darkness has surrounded him. So they interpreted it as darkness has surrounded him, which worked perfectly. But the power of the actors, they never stopped.
What a great example of, the magic, as you've spoken of, the power of theater. Yeah. I mean, I imagine there's a kind of moment that still gives you goosebumps,
easily.
When you think about it.
Yeah.
Like, this is why you do what you do, right?
Yeah. And for those actors some of them were newcomers to stage, to still keep doing and still keep performing without a light and without going, oh my God, what's my line? oh my God, is the lights going to go on? That shows the professionalism that they have. So we stopped calling it amateur theater a while ago, and I believe that quite vehemently. Somebody says amateur theater in front of me, I don't respond well.
Yeah.
We call it community theater because the only difference between these guys and professionals is they're not getting paid for this. They're community. They're part of the community. But they've rehearsed enough. They've practiced enough. They have they've been seasoned into this.
So exploring the live audience part a bit more. Obviously, there are multiple benefits to it, and that's what makes theater very unique. But I've often found that many aspiring actors still view theater as a stepping stone towards movies, even though the art form is very well established and quite distinct from cinema.
It is.
But this line of progression still exists. Why do you think that is? One reason I came up with is because of the live audience factor, which is that movies are a lot more scalable. Thousands of people can watch it in a multiplex and watch it online. But theater involves a live audience, and generally my feeling is that it works better in a smaller setting rather than a large theater because you might lose that aura.
So look, it's for a couple of different reasons. I think good actors will always tell you theater is their first love, because that live audience feeling is amazing, because that is where your skills develop. That is where you are cutting your teeth. That's where you're learning the craft. That's where you're honing and sharpening your skill. The reason, and cinema is great as well. I don't think there's a theater lover out there that says cinema is horrible. I love cinema. I mean, I grew up on movies. It's still part and parcel of my daily life. Especially when you were growing up in Dubai, when not a lot of things were there. You got a lot of movies. I think it's a matter of, one, also income. Theater doesn't pay well. It just doesn't. It's the nature of it. Scalability, of course, you can't get to so many audiences. What you'd get to in 100 shows, one big movie release across a country like India or a country like the US, you've reached much, much more. So scalability is the other thing. The third thing is, I think movies offer so much more opportunities. There is so many roles to play. There's so many movies coming out. The sheer quantity of movies that come out versus theater. So that's where these three differences to me kind of play in.
Will this never get resolved with theater because it's a smaller setting? Will it never have the amount of fame or money that movies might have?
I mean, it does have. I mean, I see over here, you've got Hamilton written up here. So it does have its perks at some of the highest levels. If you're a struggling actor, if you're struggling to make ends meet, which is, story of all professional actors starting off, then theater you can do to, again, keep your craft alive, keep learning, keep sharpening them. But movies are going to pay your bills.
How does that make you feel? Have you come to peace with that fact?
I'm okay with that.
Because it makes it a very tough industry for people to get into, even though if they love it, because the pay is, it pretty much governs your life.
Yeah, but I'm okay with it. I can live with it. Theater is such a lovely medium because you get an immediate reaction from your audience. It's not filmed. Theater takes a lot more. They say theater is an actor's medium and movies are a director's medium. And that's because in theater, it's you on stage. Once you're on stage, it's you and the audience and your co-actors. With movies, I can even take a terrible actor. I can get them to do the scene 50 times and take a best cut. And, there's a lot of actors out there, certain star kids, that you can immediately look at. No names.
I don't want hate mail.
No hate mail. No hate mail. So no names, but, which you kind of go, okay, this person's just done the scene 50 times and you've taken the best cut.
But just to reframe the previous question, don't you feel that then because of this situation, theater ends up becoming a medium where people who already have good financial stability can get into it? Not everyone can dream of entering it.
No, people still come into theater because this is where you learn the craft. So people still come into it. You see some of your finest actors. Let's go east or west. If you start off in the east, actors like Irfan Khan, even Shah Rukh Khan for that matter.
Started in theatre.
started in theatre.
Nasiruddin Shah.
Nasiruddin Shah
Puri.
started,
Yeah.
all started in theatre. They all started in theatre and then made their way to films. And of course, films got them that fame, that recognition, that pan-India, pan-globe recognition. But theatre is their first love. Even today, you'll see them coming back into theatre. You see the pictures of Shah Rukh going to his daughter's plays. Because theatre is where you cut your teeth. You learn it. It's the ground floor for this building.
What exact qualities do you think it provides? What sets him apart from an actor who might have never done theatre?
I think one, you learn to be prepared a lot more quicker. Not to say movie actors don't prepare, they prepare a lot.
Sure.
But with theatre, it prepares you up because you're going to be in front of a live audience. And that live audience is going to give you a reaction immediately. You were expecting a laugh. It's not coming. There's something that scene is not working. I could play around with movies a lot more. So it builds you a bit of resilience skills as well, right? So you start getting a little more resilient. You build that little bit of a thick skin as well to kind of go, okay, I need to work through this. I think theatre also gets you in touch with the kind of stories, narratives it is. Oops, lost a piece.
Yeah.
Gets you in touch with more mass stories. You're on the ground with people, executing with limited resources in most cases. Most theatres have limited resources.
Yeah.
And you need to execute it. You learn to work with what you got. And you learn to make it work. With big production houses especially. Budgets are there. Go build. We always say, at least in community theatre, we always say, how are you going to spend this money? Because we've got very limited budgets. We got to put up a 2-level set. How do we make this happen now? So work us through it. And so it forces you to be innovative. It forces you to be a lot more creative.
Does that inhibit your art, your creativity? Or
No, I think it just accelerates it. It accelerates it because now you are thinking of, well, how do I make this work? These are my constraints. How do I make this work? For any form of art, constraints are normal, but how do you make those constraints work in your favor? How do you get your product, your service out? How do you get your art form out with all the constraints? Dubai has its unique set of constraints.
For someone who's been in theatre for so long, do you still get like a certain thrill? Maybe if not on stage, then when the audience is coming in, there's a murmur in the crowd and you're backstage, the other curtains. Do you still get the thrill yet?
Yeah. I don't think I'd be doing it if I wasn't. Right. I mean, absolutely. I think the thrill of not just the night of the show, the opening night, as you say, but also just the feeling of starting up that first play, working on a new script, working with actors, guiding them. I'll give you a simple example. Last night, right? I won't go too far back. Last night, I was in rehearsals. I've got a play going on right now, Sherlock, Holmes and Watson. Mm-hmm. And so I was really unwell. I had a long day, lots of work. I was dead tired. I was literally thinking for the first time in this play to call up and say, listen guys, I can't. So let the assistant director take over. And I forced myself and I said, let's go. By the end of rehearsals, I was completely charged back up. I was like, this is great. But we were working for 3 straight hours. We were working quite hard for 3 straight hours. But it gave me that energy of my actors came up and said, you look better. I was like, yeah, I feel better. Yeah. So, yeah, that thrill of starting up a play, working on it, first opening night shows, people coming up, telling you what you thought, your vision coming alive, what you started off with, what was in your head, what you were able to execute, what came out on stage, and how people you meet along the journey, how they influence your thought, how they influence the story, how they influence the narrative, how they change it. I think all of that wouldn't change it for the world.
Do you think theatre can work online? Now with the pandemic, a lot of industries are now moving online. Do you think this is a medium that can also move?
No, that's my personal view. No, it's really personal. I know there are people doing it out there. No hate to them. I'm sure they're doing great work, and we're seeing some of our friends do some amazing work. But personally, I think theatre is an intimate medium, needs to be alive in a space, and you need to connect with the audience. We tried. I tried to do some stuff online. We tried to move monologues when the pandemic initially started, said, okay, let's move online. I'd say pretty much on a blanket level, every actor we heard back from after it while they did a great job, they came back and said, it doesn't feel the same. Not getting the same reaction, not getting the same joy, not getting the same feeling. That whole feeling of the audience not being there, that's a big one. So personally, to me, I know I'm not going back down that route.
But is it inevitable?
I think you'll have, I think it'll evolve into something interesting. So I definitely think there's some great stuff being done. So a friend of ours, Stephen Smith out in the UK, he came over with a show a few years ago called Dog Actor. And they're doing a fab play. They did some really cool stuff in this lockdown. And he's doing a fab play called The Black Cat that's coming up. And I was looking some of the rushes of what they're trying to do. And it is a play with no audience. So they're doing it in the theater. They're going to be moving around. I saw some of his other lockdown plays. He did some monologues at home and he kind of really worked with lights, sound in a live medium. So I'm seeing people around the world do some really interesting things. So I think something great will come out of this. I don't think it's for me.
Where do you think theatre would be in 2050? What will it look like? Would the medium that we know today, would it still exist?
I think so, yes. I mean, the medium that we know today existed back in the Roman times. Yeah. So 2050 is not that far away. I think the same medium will exist. But will you see variations, offshoots? Will you see a blend of digital theatre coming in? Will you see more AI in theatre coming in? Absolutely.
And those AI in theatre?
Yeah.
How would it
I mean, there are people experimenting right now with putting up a piece of creative work that comes out of a computer, right? Or a robot.
It creates a script.
It creates a script or it performs a script. I mean, there's a whole host of things that you could do. Scripts and plays written for people based on their preferences. I mean, we're seeing a lot of that computer learning, machine learning that's happening. And as this data goes in, Netflix has practiced it for years where, a lot of their initial shows were kind of built on machine learning. Not the shows themselves, of course, but nothing wrong with that coming into theatre, being guided by machine learning. So I think there's some amount of blend of AI and theatre that can easily happen and is probably happening already.
So have you watched the movie Birdman?
Yes.
Yeah. So in Birdman, Michael Keaton at the end, he ends up shooting his nose off.
Yeah.
Which sparks a commentary about super realism in theatre. In general, other industries, especially movies and even gaming, things are moving towards more immersion, more reality, better graphics, more visceral emotions, and a lower suspension of disbelief. Do you think theatre also has to be wary of moving towards realism?
I think we're already realistic enough. I think how much more realistic do you get? It is a live medium. The actor's right in front of you. So no, I don't see much of room for it. I'm sure somebody will come up with something. So I don't deny that people may come up with something. But I think it's realistic enough. And that's the allure of theatre, right? It is a live medium. You're seeing the actor in front of you. And I think you suspend the disbelief of where they are. So maybe the location, venues, you kind of go, okay, fine, I can live with that. How good is the set? How good is the venue? You do have a lot of immersive theatre that tends to happen, which is around, you take people to a position, to a place where the theatre show and the audience is moving with the actor. So they're in a real place and they move with the audience. Yeah. A couple of groups have experimented with that in Dubai. To success and some mixed feedback. So I think those have been good experiments.
So you've been to these 5D, 7D cinemas. Is it possible to see like a hybrid of those 7D cinemas in a theatre?
Where we throw water on people?
Yeah, can you imagine? Or like a scent of, if you're in a garden or something like that. So
I'm sure people will do it. I'm a little more of a purist. I'm sure there are people who will do it. I don't deny it. I'm absolutely sure there's somebody who will do it. It can be done. Somebody will do it. Not my personal cup of tea.
Sure. So back to the realism part. I think you had shared the story. I think it was the adaptation of Reservoir Dogs.
Yes.
In which, I'm not sure if it was you or some other actor, where you were supposed to hit someone, but because you got in the zone, you actually ended up hitting. Unintentionally, of course. Let me specify that.
Unintentionally. I'm sorry, Alejandro.
That's what we're telling the public. Yeah. But do you think that would become more common? Like,
I mean, look, it does. I mean, there is a sense of you practice and then things can go wrong. And yes, we did practice quite safely. There's an infamous torture scene in the play, and there is some elements where we beat one particular character up, not the actor. The actor's a sweet guy.
words are important.
And then sometimes on the day, so what happened was, in my case, is a scene where I had to drag the guy in, and he comes spitting blood because he's already been beaten. And so, he would be some tips from behind. He would be chewing beetroot because
Hacks.
and some hacks. And so, he spits that out as he's being dragged in, and it looks like, he's coughing up blood. And while I was dragging him in on the last show, I think it was the last show, he spit it out, and it came next to my shoe, and I slipped on it while I was pulling him in. And of course, as an actor, you've practiced. You're not going to break character. And so my job was dragging him in and beating him up. So I started kicking him right there on the ground. A couple of those kicks landed straight to his gut. That was part of the show.
Unintentional.
And he was a big sport about it because he had tortured by, I think, 3 people. And there were a few kicks and headbutts that might have landed at some points. But you practice safely, right? You kind of go practice safely, but then things can happen. So you have to do it in a safe environment.
Interesting controversy on the show already. Okay, so let's talk a bit about directing.
Yeah.
Do you find it annoying that you have to focus on so many little things about like sounds, lights, props, stage position, script changes, and you've described it as an iceberg effect because the audience even doesn't get to see a lot of them? Or I would say I'll reframe it in the sense that when I'm watching a scene and you've put a certain soundtrack or you put lights in a certain way, at that moment I'm not really processing that this sound is evoking a certain emotion or this light is making me emphasize something. I'm just watching the scene and I'm lost in the visual.
But you're not just lost in the visual, you're lost in the whole moment.
Yes.
You might not process it at the conscious level, but subconsciously, all of those things are important.
Yes.
They create that moment. The lights, how they're being thrown, the sound effects. And to an audience member, they may just kind of process it in the moment at the conscious level of, wow, that scene looked good, the actor acted well. Yeah. But all of those other things that complemented it really, really played a part in that.
They definitely add to it. But my question is more of, as a director, naturally you need to focus on all these things. But do you often feel like a sense of regret that many people don't notice?
No.
Maybe 40% of the audience will never notice a certain element.
And that's fine. But that's part of the vision that I wanted to bring alive. I wanted that scene there. I wanted people to appreciate. And people, you'll be surprised how much they notice, what they come back with, what are the things they pick up. People will sometimes call you up, and I've had experience where people have called me up the day after, 2 days later, and kind of gone, you know what, I was thinking about that scene. You did that with the lights. I'm realizing it now. And so people notice. It's not just that experience. I always give credit to your audience. The audience is smart enough. They'll pick it up. They're an adult processing audience. They will process it properly. So we always say that. And this is why I don't like, let's play it up for them. Let's make it easier for them. Oh, they're laughing. Let's play it up for them.
Yeah. You want to keep it subtle a little bit.
Yeah. You want to leave it open to some interpretation. You want people to walk away with their own interpretation of what happened. Sometimes that's the best kind of theater. Yeah. Okay, there are moments and there are certain plays in which you want to tell them exactly what's happening. But for me, some of the best moments are where you leave it to them to kind of go, well, what really happened there? Well, I think this is what happened. Somebody else goes, well, I think that's what happened. I think those conversations that happen afterwards, when you leave the theater, go for dinner, or you're sitting on the breakfast table the next day and having that conversation, those are great conversations.
Right. So you're fine with a lot of things being subconscious and not really pointed out. That's fine.
You don't have to spoon feed your audience all the time. Sure. There are moments when you'll need to do that, but not every moment is that. You don't need to spoon feed them. I'm okay.
When you walk in for rehearsal, do you walk in with everything planned in your mind, things you want to try out, or do you walk in with an empty mind and let the story guide you?
I won't say you walk in with an empty mind. I think you walk in at least I walk in broadly knowing what I want to do. But I also leave a lot of room for experimentation, especially in the early parts of a production. So if it's early days in a production, you want to try, you want to experiment, you want to let it go with the flow. But as we get closer to opening night, as we get closer to show, you want to, or at least I want to, lock things in and keep them. Clearly, I really don't like experimenting a week before the show. Like, there are people who come and say, hey, shall we experiment? Shall we try something new this week? Yeah. I'm like, the show opens in 4 days. We're not experimenting now. There's a time for experimentation. There's a time for being open. And there's a time for saying, okay, let's lock it all in. And so for me, it depends on what phase of the production you're in.
This ties in perfectly with my next question. Almost all the directors you had on the roundtable, the Junction roundtable, had spoken about theatre being a unconscious art form, in the sense that a good story always controls you and you become this vessel or this conduit for the story. Yeah. A bit abstract, but I can see. I mean, most artistic fields, most creative fields, people do talk about this flow state where the work takes over you and it just flows through you. Would you agree with this?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was Dhruti who said it on our chat, and she talked about a flame, and she talked about seeing a flame, and the flame took over. And yeah, look, I won't go as far as flame and stuff. Sorry, Dhruti, but I will go as far as saying you do get caught up in the moment. You go with the flow. There is an energy. There is something that starts happening, and it's it's everybody working towards the one vision. Things start to happen. I don't know how else to explain it, but yeah.
Is it harder for you to make a bad story good because you put a lot of effort and skill into it, but a good story, because by its nature it's good, it will become great? In a way, it leads itself towards greatness.
Look, I don't know what constitutes to a bad story versus a good story. I think because as a director, you pick your play, right? I mean, I'm picking a play. I mean, generally it's very hard for me to pick what I consider a bad story and then direct it. Right. Now, producing is a whole different question, because there I'm working with other directors when I'm producing, and they may want to do a story which I think is not great. But even then I have the choice of, do I really want to do this or not? And so I don't know if I fully agree with the question of, is it a bad story or a good story? So I think all stories are great. If you've picked it up and you've wanted to do it, it's a good story. Now the question that comes up is, how much do you believe in it? And how will you push it? You put a right team around it. I think that's important. Putting the right team around it.
Another question on similar lines, and this is inspired by a quote from Nasiruddin Shah. He had said that, I have grappled with this question for many years, that whether experiencing difficulty in real life is what drives people to become actors. And it ties in with this very common adage which says that great work comes from great suffering. Would you agree with it?
No. I don't think you need to suffer to get great work out. Yes, people who've been through strife, challenges, know the value of the work they're putting in. And so there might be this sense of things that come out of them are great, but that's not always the case. So I don't fully agree with the statement. I still believe that different actors can come from different states of mind. Some deal better coming from a state of adversity, and others can be very positive and still deliver the best. So I don't think your state of mind, your current affairs kind of dictates how good you are. I think it dictates what you do, what you pick up, how you interpret. That I agree. But I don't agree that it dictates how good or bad you are. Because what are we saying? We're saying only if you've been through pain and suffering can you deliver good work. What do we say to actors who've not been through pain and suffering? And okay, now you can argue the whole principle, the Buddhist principle of life is suffering. Yeah. All existence is suffering. Yeah. Now, okay, that is that's a whole different way to look at
That's
it. But
also riddle, right? Everyone's suffering. so
everyone's
like,
suffering.
Yeah, perfect.
But look, I'd like to see it as a positive outcome, and theaters have had a very positive impact on my life. So I don't associate the word suffering with theater. It's just me. For me, it's words that I associate with theater are excitement, fun, creativity, outlet.
Would an actor who's never seen pain or suffering be able to do justice to a character who's going through the same?
I think everybody's seen suffering and pain. I don't think this. Now we're going back to that. But yeah, I think everybody's seen some pain and suffering. I think how well can you relate to it? So when I talk to actors and we're doing character discussions and we're doing character sketches and let's talk about your character. And there could be moments where you've not experienced it. You don't necessarily have to have experienced it to be able to go through it. But can you relate to it? What is the closest thing you can relate to in this character? And does that help you? Now, some actors work best with things like that. So they work well with, and some I've noticed are just naturally gifted. So they're able to switch on very quickly. They have very high empathy levels. So they can pick that up very quickly. Others I've seen lower empathy levels, but yet they can switch on. So like I said, I don't know if that is the criteria for being a successful actor. I don't necessarily agree whether that's being a criteria for being a successful actor.
Is it hard, while we're talking about playing characters with suffering or dark characters, is it hard to avoid parts of that trace of the character seeping into your own personality? And I say this because I vividly remember this interview I watched of Rajkumar Rao, the Bollywood actor.
Yeah. Fantastic actor.
Yeah, he was preparing for this role for Shahid. I'm not sure. Yes. So it's a movie about a human rights activist and faced a lot of religious prejudice.
Yeah.
And what he was saying was he's reached such a dark state of mind when he's preparing for the role that one day when you're sitting at home watching the news.
I remember this interview.
Yes, a report comes on about a terrorist attack. And his first reaction was, Acha hua.
Yeah, I remember this interview.
Before he caught himself and just got back.
Yeah.
Is this a line that you have to be very careful of?
I think that depends from actor to actor. But yes, I've seen, and people have related, and when I've acted, certain characters bleed onto stage. So I'll give you a lighter version of the same story. Sure. We were doing this play in November, Reservoir Dogs, you mentioned, and I got back onto stage in a fairly chunky role after a while, and my character was supposed to be very angry, usually simmering beneath the surface, and constantly biting off everybody's head. And I literally found myself, as I would drive to rehearsals, I would enter rehearsals with this, this very disgusted look on my face, just going, what the hell is going on over here? Everything started irritating me. And at some point, I remember sitting down with the director and going, listen, it's not you. I know I'm giving you a hard time, but it's just I'm getting so much into this character that I am literally coming in mentally in a state of mind that everybody is irritating me here. Everything is not what it's supposed to be, and people are not doing what they're supposed to do. And it bled on to my personal life as well. So yes, I can understand it. I can see it. And of course, as you go darker into characters, then it gets more darker.
Is that a scary place to be? Because there are so many popular examples. One was Heath Ledger.
Yes,
Joker.
very big one.
And the story goes that when he got the role,
he locked himself in a hotel for...
Yes, but just before that, when he was researching for the role, he called up Jack Nicholson. And because Jack Nicholson had played the previous version of the Joker, and asked him for advice. And Jack Nicholson had said, don't let the role consume you. And then... That's exactly what happened. And when Heath Ledger passed away, the reporters went up to Jack Nicholson, asked him his thoughts. And the only thing he said was, I warned him. And this ties in with something Friedrich Nietzsche had said, that one who fights monsters should be careful that he doesn't become a monster themselves. Because when you gaze into the abyss gazes back. So is this something that you should be scared of when you're in an artistic field?
I don't think you have to be scared of it. I think you just need to manage yourself. I think there has to be some healthy outlet of energy. And so you have to look as a director, as a team that's around actors. You got to be careful handling actors. I wear a bit of kid gloves around actors, handle them with care. You got to look after their well-being, mental well-being as well, as they're doing plays as well. So, I always get into questions of, listen, how much me time are you having? How much are you letting this drive you crazy? And there are moments in the play where during the production where we meet with families, we'll meet with, wider the actor's family or their friends and stuff. And I'll ask the questions of their better half to kind of go, when I'm alone with them, I kind of go, is he or she all right? Especially if I'm noticing something that is off. Without naming names, there was an actor that I was fairly worried about in the community a few years ago, where I felt they were going into a darker place because of the roles they kind of played. And then when the casting came up for another dark role, they went, we will take that person. And no, we're going to let that person take a break. Right. Because they need to take a break. And they're not realizing it themselves, but they need a break on this. So, you look out for the community looks out for you. I think we make sure that there's healthy outlets, like people aren't going too crazy into this. Because remember, at the end of the day, especially with community theater, let's keep it at the community theater level. People are doing this as a creative outlet. They're doing this because they want to enjoy themselves. So, let's not go down crazy dark routes on this. And so those conversations you have to have at the right time with the right people. Of course, if your entire, your entire career and profession depends on this, then that's a different question of how much do you get down. And yes, it produces great results, but is it worth it? Is it worth it?
You mentioned this being a creative outlet. Once again, all the directors you had on the roundtable, they all spoke about a lot of this plays being inspired from a personal event or maybe their own experience of mental health or depression or some trauma, divorce or some childhood trauma of some sort. How much of art is for yourself? And obviously the story then picks up, becomes its own thing, but do you think there's a vested self-interest in a lot of work that you do?
Not a lot of the work that I do, because if you see with many of the works that I do, I like to keep things like, I'm a little more commercial, murder mysteries, comedies, dramedies. Couple of the plays that I did, I really thought the subject was very interesting. So for me, I don't put, people kind of tend to think, let's put thought into this and let's put hours into, should I do this subject and what does it mean for the world? No, I pick my own plays. Do I like the story? Is it something that I would like to watch? Can I do something interesting with it? Those are the considerations that I'm giving it. There are, with all due respect, there are other directors who get into a lot of these other questions. Not my thing. I think the stories should be something I enjoy doing personally for me, not something that creates additional pressures for me personally. That's the way I look at my scripts. Really, honestly, that's just for myself. There are others who do it very differently. And that's okay. That's a whole different school of thought. And that produces great theater as well. More power to them.
Interesting. Okay, so let's move on to our next segment, which is the idea incubator. In this segment, I ask my guests to share an idea, concept, or theory which has had a very profound impact in their life. Yeah. You've chosen to speak about Vipassana meditation.
Yep.
But just before we dive into the practice, I would love to get your thoughts on your grandfather, Dr. S.N. Goenka. He is a recipient of the Padma Bhushan, one of the most renowned teachers of Vipassana meditation in the world. What are some memories of your grandfather that you carry to this day?
I think my grandfather was somebody who had a deep, profound impact in my life. The positive lessons we learned from him and through his teachings of Vipassana was something that resonated with me till date. As with the entire family, my cousins and stuff, Vipassana plays a very key role in our lives. So I don't think we can't separate that from us. Some of the best memories of growing up with him was just the simplicity with which he approached a lot of the challenges and problems that he saw. When you sat with him, he was able to be with you in the moment. And you felt that. I don't know how else to explain it. There was this vibe of you. You felt he understood. You talked about, whether you talked about when I was growing up about school, whether you talked about when I further grew up about work, or whether you talked to him about theater, or you talked to him about some interests. He had this persona. When he looked at you, you felt like he could see right through your soul. I don't know how else better to explain it, but you felt like he could tell. And he was able that he had this disarming quality of just being able to talk to you at your level that just meant so much more. Some of the best memories was just seeing him do all the work that he was doing and never really realize as I saw him as a child growing up all the way till he passed away, and you never realized the profound impact that he had. I don't think I realized the scale, gamut, size of Vipassana and its impact till I did my first course, 16, 17. I don't think I realized the impact. I was like, okay, he does something with meditation. That's about it. But then he goes out, he's on tour, he's out in various parts of the world. This was back in the 80s, 90s when touring was not that common, but he would be out months in the year. We'd go down to the global centers. Igatpuri was the big one those days. Nowadays, Global Pagoda. You look at it, but you don't really get the sense of this is huge. At least not as a child, you don't. So those are my impressions of him. And when we growing up around him, we saw a lot of famous people, which is, again, you never interpreted the same way, whether it be, I remember seeing, we had the Dalai Lama at home.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Remember in Burma, when you go down there, you'd have quite a few monks and famous people down there as well. It's just, you never realize it, right? I mean, until the moment's gone, you kind of look at pictures and, that's the Dalai Lama and my grandfather is sitting at home. So that's
what was Dalai Lama like in person?
I never got to meet him.
Oh,
But
right.
My grandfather, I think, met him a couple of times, as I understand. There's a letter that's at home from him. I think he sent a handwritten letter to him, which I think is at home. I saw it during the lockdown as we were doing cleaning, on wishing him on his birthday. And he had written in that letter that, people like you and I don't believe in these birthdays and these things, but, being a Dhamma brother, just wanted to wish you to say, meditate today and it's a nice day. Kind of something like that. It was just, It was a very weird feeling,
Yeah.
I remember one of my other experiences with him was I was studying at the American University in Dubai over here, and Bill Clinton was coming in as he was a patron, so he was a speaker at the graduation. And then prior to that, he had come into the university. They'd called him in for something, and he was there, and they'd selected a group of people to meet him. And my grandfather happened to be in town, and he said, Bill Clinton's in town. And yeah. He said, you know what? We had met at the World Economic Forum. Can you give him this letter? Okay, give him this letter. I'm already in awe of, I'm going to have breakfast with this man for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So can you give him this letter? Okay. So he wrote a letter, he put it in an envelope and gave it to me. And I remember, we all, of course, got all frisked by Secret Service before we entered to that breakfast. And I had this letter on me, and the Secret Service guy went, what's that? And I kind of went, my grandfather had met him and he wanted me to give him this letter. And my grandfather had also given me his book, and he had said, he had told him that when he had met him at the Economic Forum, he had told him, I'll send you the book. So okay, he said, this book and stuff, and the Secret Service guy, you can't take that in. So we will take these, we'll make sure it reaches him. Okay, fine. So we went, had that breakfast. It was nice. He was very charismatic. And then months later, I remember I got called by the student services, and they said, there's a letter here for you. I was wondering why there's a letter at student services for me. I went, they handed me a letter. I looked at it, didn't think much of it, turned it around. There was a seal on it. I didn't think much of it. I tore it open. I broke the seal, opened up. And that's when I started reading the letter. It was a small little letter, a handwritten letter. And then I noticed the seal on top, and it said, from the desk of the President of the United States. And I went, okay, hold on. This is... And he had replied back. It was a handwritten letter. He'd reply back.
He was a president at that point?
No, Bush was the president. So he had come out of power. So, but it was really, but they still get, the seal is still the same. So it was very interesting. So, with grandfather, we had these sort of experiences in life. Again, we don't talk much about that. The practice was more important. But these were some, you asked me what are some big memories that stood out. That was like a moment. I remember calling him up and saying, I received Bill Clinton. He's like, what did he write? So it was a very, and the simplest of things. So, I remember when he used to come over as much younger, 6th grade and stuff. So he used to spend, before he went on the Europe or US tours that he used to go on to, he used to stop in Dubai for 2 months. And he got a lot of his work done over here. And in Dubai, we would see a very different side of him, a very simple side, grandfather side to him. So he would come over, simple, we were living in an apartment. And then every morning we'd go for a walk. And those days we used to go to Hyatt Regency. There was a creek in front of Cornish, in front of Hyatt Regency, and we'd go for a walk. And it was really funny because those days he used to have this TV show that used to come out called Jagran, that used to come out on TV every morning. And my grandmother and him used to be on, and they would talk about meditation, centering. And
on Doordarshan, was it? No.
it was on ZTV was eventually, but there was to be another TV channel. I'm forgetting the name.
There's something called Jagran only, like Z
there's-
Jagran, probably.
Yeah. So it started off on Z. That time there was no Z Jagran.
Yeah.
It started off as a show on Z in the mornings.
Right.
There's a couple of other channels. I think there was one on Doordarshan as well.
Sure.
I'm not sure, but he used to have this show. But it was really interesting because we'd go for this morning walk. And I remember walking with him because, somebody had to walk with him. And my dad would be traveling sometimes, so I'd have to go. And so we'd walking in the morning and you'd see people kind of passing him away. That look on their face, like, I've seen this guy somewhere. And some people would stop him. They would want to talk to him. We're facing these challenges. And it was always interesting. He made time for people. He made time to talk to them about the challenges they were facing, to help them out. And there was never this commercial vested interest. There was never a ulterior motive to him. It was, you need help, I'm here. And that, I think, had a profound impact on us, all the kids in the family.
Well, I've not heard of many people having letters just hidden around the house of the Dalai Lama. Just spring cleaning, you find.
You find
Yeah,
it.
you find a letter from the Dalai Lama. This has never happened to me.
It was a different experience, right? I mean, I'm like, yeah, that's a Dalai Lama's letter.
I find embarrassing things about my childhood and stuff. You're finding letters. From
No,
Dalai Lama.
we find embarrassing things as well. But you find some of this stuff sometimes.
Amazing.
You clean up grandfather stuff, some stuff comes out.
Yeah, and Bill Clinton. I remember going to watch Bill Clinton when he came to UAE back in 2011, I think, or 2010. And he was giving a speech about the foundation that he runs. And
Yes.
I was
That
I was just one of the students. So not
he came a few times, and he came a couple of times to the American University. He came a few times.
Yeah.
Very charismatic speaker.
Yeah.
Very,
neighbor.
think whatever you have about him, but
Yeah.
the guy has charisma.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, public speaking charisma is just
Stands
out
out.
of this world. I met him another time, again in university, was when he had come to launch his book, My Life. And I remember getting a copy of the book from him, and we got to spend about 15-20 seconds as we were getting that book. And I told him, my grandfather, and he went, oh yeah, I got that book from your grandfather, please do say this, say hello to him. And it was an interesting moment, 15-20 seconds. And
I got that book.
Yeah.
Great. And all the words that he spoke about your grandfather, they all make him sound such a wonderful person, so well respected and loved. I think so. Jack Cornfield had once written about him that in every generation there are a few visionary and profound masters who hold high the lamp of dharma to illuminate the world. And I think that's a great.
He was very well respected. He never got into politics. Never got into controversy, politics. He avoided it. My grandmother always accompanied him wherever he went. She was also a principal teacher in Vipassana. And he went around the world. He spoke at the United Nations. He spoke at couple of World Economic Forums, and many other trips to various other important places. But always with the view of let's try and get people to move towards happiness through discovering themselves, see things as they are. And that was the principal goal of Vipassana. Just meditate, see who you are. You just want to be a better human being. No religious angle to it. You can follow whatever religion you want. Just be a good human being.
Okay, so let's dive into it. What is Vipassana meditation?
Vipassana meditation is a form of meditation that encourages people to journey with themselves, to see things as they are, and to discover that they are they're the cause of their own happiness or their suffering. To kind of discover that at a experiential level, not because somebody told you so, not because a guru told you, not because you need to see something. No, it's realize you are the key to making yourself happy or unhappy. And while that sounds quite obvious, people kind of go, yeah, duh. But it's different at an experiential level. You start realizing it literally on a bodily experiential level as you meditate. So it's a 10-day retreat where you go to one of the Vipassana centers. No reading, no writing, no talking. You're cut off from the rest of the world. They take care of you. They feed you. They give you a place to sleep. And you learn the technique. And you have to complete 10 days. And the best part, there's no charges to it. There's nothing. Zero. At the end of 10 days, and only if you complete 10 days, if you want to give something, you can anonymously put something in the box. Nobody's going to ask how much you put, what you put. You don't even have to put anything. So people end up donating. So the first kind of, it breaks down your ego, because the first thing you're doing is you're sitting on somebody else's donation. You're equal to the pauper who's sitting next to you, who may not have a penny to their name, and you might be a millionaire, but it breaks your ego. It kind of tells you, listen, we're all the equal. It's not a physical form. It's a mental journey. It's what a lot of us these days have started calling mindfulness. A lot of its roots are into Vipassana. What we see as modern day meditation, lots of roots into Vipassana. Some great stuff being done there.
Does that set it apart from these other forms of meditation? There are so many out there these days. There's transcendental, for example. So what tenets of Vipassana then do you feel set it apart from the others?
I think Vipassana is the big tenet that sets it apart is it is experiential, i.e. a lot of students get attracted and a lot of youngsters get attracted to Vipassana because they kind of go, I'm not believing it because somebody told me so. It's not about seeing something that's not there. What it gets you to a point where you realize your thoughts are affecting you at a bodily level. And you realize that in 10 days, as you're having negative thoughts, there are certain small little pricks, pins that are happening across your body. You're starting to realize, I physically start feeling worse when I am having these negative thoughts, when I'm doing this stuff, and I physically start improving as I start being positive. And whether it's positive or negative, if I just watch it, if I just observe that moment, the nature of every moment is it arises and passes away. And so you don't just believe that it arises and passes away, you experience it. If I just observe that moment. They tell you get angry, breathe for 5 seconds. Why? Because it arises and passes away. But most of the time we react positively or negatively to any stimuli, external stimuli that comes. And then thereby end up either harming ourselves or hurting ourselves or reacting in a manner. If you just observe, and that's not to say become a vegetable, but if you just observe, you tend to focus better. And that is why Vipassana, what it sets it apart is you can apply it any given day, any given time, whatever you're doing. And people start realizing that this is creating, so corporates started realizing this is creating effective, not just employees, but leaders. Because if leaders are a little more calm, they're able to breathe, they're able to deal with challenges, they're able to focus. And then they get the answer. Governments started finding, especially in the prison system where Vipassana started coming in, they started finding that prisons became rarely a revolving door for criminals, where
recidivism.
Yeah, people kind of started realizing at their own level that this is what I did, and started trying to improve their lives. And that experiment was done way around the world, right from the Alabama state prisons to Tihar jail in India.
Your grandfather's involved in that with Kiran Bedi.
Yeah. And Kiran Bedi, Dr. Bedi is a big follower of Vipassana as well. And so that came into practice. And now there are permanent centers in certain jails, like Tihar jail has a permanent ongoing Vipassana presence. Many other prisons, like I said, it went over, Oprah covered it in the Dhamma Brothers documentary, where it was about the experimentation with Vipassana in the Alabama State Prison, and it worked quite well because they saw their rates go down of people just coming back as a revolving door. So it's a simple technique. There's nothing physical to it. It's about sitting. It's about observing your breath starting off with, and then they take you through more of the technique. There's no abstract imagination. There's no repeat the guru's name. There's no gurudom to it. It's you, yourself. You are, if you're the cause of the problem, you're the solution of the problem. And you realize that yourself, which I found very liberating. Students, so, the third category is students. Universities, education institutes started finding that, hey, some of our students, when they do Vipassana meditation at a young age, they're a lot more centered. They're a lot less prone to being, when they observed it during exam times, they found students are a lot more calmer. They're able to not feel pressured as much. In fact, there's a couple of universities I know of in India. In certain programs, your admission is contingent on you completing a Vipassana course. So you're accepted into the university, and now you're going to go attend a 10-day course and come. And once you do that, they'll accept you. And because the course doesn't cost anything to do, so the university doesn't have a problem telling you, go do it. It's not going to cost you. They'll put you up, they'll feed you. But we find our students come out better. So some real tangible benefits, and you're seeing world leaders starting to acknowledge that. One of the ones who recently did, in the last 2 years, you've seen Jack Dorsey really pick up, and he's been a big proponent of Vipassana. He came down, I think, to India also, and Sri Lanka and a couple of other places, and he's done a few courses. So the practice has grown. It's spread to I think almost 100 countries. 90 to 100 centers. It's growing. Even post his passing, Vipassana is still doing well. And that's because it was never about one person. He had a teacher just like, there are teachers now after him as well.
You mentioned some of the key tenets of this practice is, one, it dissolves your ego and the tensions associated with the ego, and also makes you more mindful and more observant of reality. This has benefits in all fields and in life in general, but since you're involved in theater as well, what are the benefits that actors might see, or directors might see, or writers might see?
See, look, with actors, we always, whenever we're warming up before going on stage, or even during rehearsals, we always practice mindfulness, or what we call mindfulness these days, is just observing your breath, breathe. We do a bit of meditation before going on stage. Not Vipassana meditation, just general meditation, sitting, breathing. And that's been a practice, not in my plays, but in general. Theatre actors.
How long do you do it?
5 minutes, 10 minutes, at least, just to kind of center yourself. And that helps, because it helps you shut out the noise. We're active all day long. There's a lot of things happening in our lives. There's so much going on. How do you shut all that noise off and be in the moment? And I think that is a key principle in theatre as well. When you're on stage, how do you not react when things go wrong? How do you control yourself? How do you be in the moment? How do you get into your character? You're stepping into somebody else's shoe. How do you switch off from all the daily tensions and be here? I think those are all great principles. They, as you said, they have benefits not just to theatre, but so much about.
Guy Ritchie, the director of Sherlock Holmes
Yes.
and Lock, Stock and Snatch, he had once said that most stories can be broken down into a protagonist's internal conflict versus the external conflict. Do you think meditation that can help you become a better writer, or a better director, or a better actor in
Easily.
that sense? Because it helps you resolve the internal.
Easily. In the last few years, the amount of, and again, I don't generally talk about Vipassana in theatre. So the theatre community, if they know me, I don't go out proactively talking about it. But in the last few years, the amount of actors that have suddenly started coming up and saying, hey, I signed up for a meditation course. Hey, I want to go for Vipassana. Or, hey, I didn't know you're related to the Vipassana guy? I didn't realize that. And you start to find this helps my craft. This helps me. It helps me resolve a lot of my internal conflicts. Yeah. Some of my external ones. People go through, tough relationships. People going through, especially now with the pandemic, all forms of stress in our life. How do we get it? I think that's a key question, right? People want to be stress-free. How do I get stress-free? And they're always looking for an external answer. People are always looking for, what can I pay for? And you take this away. And unfortunately, it's not that simple. It's not pay and take it away. This one requires you to do hard work. This one requires you to get up and do something, and money is not going to matter here on this. Yeah.
Well, when I was researching for this episode itself, I was very tempted to go for one of the retreats.
We'll definitely chat about it.
Yeah, for sure. Is there a place in Dubai? Or
yes. So it happens in the UAE. It happens up in Ras Al Khaimah.
Right.
In fact, a course started just 2 days ago.
Where can people find it?
So if people want to sign up, you go onto the website dhamma.org, dhamma.org. And that is a list of all the courses that are happening around the world. And you register and you sign up. UAE has been having Vipassana since almost 25 years. So it's been in the UAE almost 25 years. There's been regular Vipassana happening. I think they're striving and working towards building a center right now. But now, when it used to happen like maybe once in a year, the courses, or twice in a year, now there are courses around the year, back to back. Of course, the pandemic has slowed things down. They have to social distance and do it in a safe manner. But there are courses happening pretty much 1 week after another, as they do in a center. One course gets over, they wait 2 days, they get the place ready, and then the next course starts. And that's what the UAE is experiencing. And a lot more people are coming in, people from different walks of life, people from different backgrounds, ages. When I did the first course that I did, I was 16, 17 years old. No family pressure. In fact, the pressure came from my best friend. My best friend in school was sitting for a course on his own, completely unrelated. And he went, I'm going for your grandfather's course. And I went, man, I don't know what he does. I mean, he does something with meditation. I told you, till then you don't realize it. And I kind of went, okay, if you're going for it, I'll go for it. And it's only post that course that realization of the work that he was doing really just hit me. And it's 10 days, right? I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy because 10 days, no reading, no writing, no talking, right? And so people start off and, I think I always say to anybody who's going new, do yourself a favor. One rule that you go in with is, I will not run, because it's a deep operation of your mind, right? You sit there and you're operating on your mind. You're going through, what are the thoughts that are bothering me? What are the things that are coming up? Not that you're being channeled to think about it. What you realize is they tell you concentrate on your breath, right? Observe your breath coming in and going. And you sit there for an hour trying to do that. You know what happens in the first 10 seconds?
Mind wanders.
Mind wanders.
Yeah.
And where does the mind wander to?
Thoughts or whatever.
About either the past or the future.
Sure.
It never stays in the present. So it either goes to, oh my God, that happened to me. How dare that happen to me? That moment was so embarrassing, or that was so great. So it either goes to past or future. It either goes to good or bad. So it goes to either I'm craving for something, I wish there was more of this. Or it's aversion. It's, I don't want that to happen. I hope that doesn't happen. So it's anxiety. If it goes to the future, it's anxiety. If it goes to the past, it is about aversion.
Hardly good memories. Right?
Even if it's good, it's craving then. Then it's going to one more. And what happens when you don't get it? Because the world doesn't work according to you. It rarely stays in the present. And that's what Vipassana helps you do. Stay in the present, right? Stay in the present for a while. See how things are working out. Because you're in this constant cycle of craving, aversion. You're in a constant cycle of running to the past or running to the future. So how do you stay in the moment? And that's what it helps with. And that's why it benefits so much to all these people, whether corporates, whether prisoners, whether students, whether government officials, because they start to go, okay, I could do better if I just stayed in the moment. But I can't because my mind wanders off in 10 seconds. So the first 3 days is just sitting there, watching your breath, observing it, and stopping this monkey of a brain jumping past present, past future, craving aversion, and you get it concentrated onto your breath. And the only thing pure right now is the breath. So they say, concentrate on the breath. And then on day 4, they start teaching you Vipassana. But it's not easy. Everything in your body will react. It'll fight back, right? Because they're going, it doesn't want to be caged. This monkey in your brain doesn't want to be caged. So it's fighting back. It's going to go, this is crazy. I don't need to sit here. I don't need to think these thoughts. I don't need to do this. So it starts pushing and it starts prodding and it starts. So that battle is different for each person. How wild that monkey is in your brain is different for each person.
Do you think that 10 days is necessary? Can someone do a shorter one if they're very new to the...
There aren't. I mean, the technique back in the day, as I understand from my grandfather, used to be at least a month long. It used to be 30 days. But 10 days is as small as they could make it, without actually compromising on the integrity of the technique. Right. So it's 10 days. And yes, it's a lot to take out in today's day and age, but people take it out. And then as you grow in the practice, there are 20-day courses, there are 30-day courses, 45-day courses, 90-day courses, there's 120-day courses, and people do them. No reading, no writing, no talking. You're not connected. You don't get to take your phone. You don't get to read a book because you're with yourself. Observe yourself.
Can't start with 3 or 4 days. Dive into 10. It is challenging to think about.
It is.
I'm pretty sure it'll be very rewarding, but it is still.
It's
unimaginable at the current
at
state.
the current state and
Yeah.
age. And that's what happens. But people are doing it. People kind of come and say, "Look, I'll take that 10 days. Because they're suffering that much. They're suffering that much on the inside. Okay, they're not showing it on the outside. But they're living in this world where there's this constant need to please, right? What is our social media except we're constantly looking for likes, we're constantly looking for people to please. Look at me, I'm having such a great life. And I read somewhere very interesting, somebody had written, I wish your life is as great as you make it on social media. Right? You heard that quote? Yeah, very common one. Yeah. But that's the truth, isn't it? We're always trying to one up each other. And who's going crazy in that? The individual.
Interesting. I encourage everyone to check out the practice. Okay, so before we move on to the final questions, love for you to interpret what we have built with the Lego here.
I have no idea what I have built, but I don't know. Platform, stage. I've been trying to build here with no discernible logic to it. I have no idea what I've built here.
It looks very interesting. I don't know. I'm not sure if you've been to the Autodrome in Motor City.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, like that is the auto. Yes, that is what I was going for.
Exactly.
That is what I was going for.
What an artist.
That's exactly what
I.
This then becomes an oil tanker of some sort. If I stick a few more of these.
Amazing. What do you think I've done? If you think
listen, that is definitely like some sort of power grid or
definitely
that's a power grid right there.
That's exactly what I was doing. Yeah. What a player.
You're a great actor.
Chai wala, what a player.
You're a great artist.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I wish my mom's watching.
He's a great artist.
Remember that. Okay. Okay. So let's move to our final questions. What are some books, movies, or people that have strongly influenced you in your life?
Okay. Wow. Books, movies, or people. Let's start with movies. Those are my easiest ones. And more than influenced me, I think they had a profound impact because they're some of my favorite movies. Right. So my all-time favorite movie is Saving Private Ryan, not because I have something to do with World War II, but I just loved it. It was such a beautiful story, I think. So definitely my favorite English movie is Saving Private Ryan. My favorite Hindi movie was Rang De Basanti, which came out back in 2006. Superb movie. I thought it was a great story. And these are purely on stories. This is not because it had a profound impact on my life to change it. It's a great story. I loved it. My favorite books that have, again, I won't say they influenced me, but they're books that really I enjoyed reading and I can go back and read them at any time. Bram Stoker's Dracula remains one of my favorites. Loved the way that book is written and so beautifully, it evokes such great visual memories in my head. The Lord of the Rings, all three, some of my favorite books, also the movies. So some of my favorite movies as well. If I think back at my, books, movies, and
role models, people,
role models. I had a couple of them. Definitely my grandfather is a big influence in my life. I think we've already talked enough about him, but he's a big role model for me. Real life people that I look up to, always a lot of respect for, of course, my immediate family, parents, father. But if I look back at people that really shaped me where I am is, we used to have a leader in GE, the HR director, Raghu Krishnamurthy. He became the chief HR officer of the company. And from him, I learned a lot about the power of people and harnessing that power, helping people along the way, empathy, but also the power of how people can help an organization. So big influence. He's a great writer, orator. You bring him in, his communication skills are amazing. I mean, and his story, he has such humble beginnings and such a big story to go on to lead the HR wing of a 300,000 employee company like GE at that point. Starting off in a small facility in India and then working his way up there. Very interesting, very inspiring story, a great role model for leaders to follow. So I thought he was great. And then my second grade teacher,
Shout out.
Miss Etta D'Souza, she's no longer with us, but she taught me the importance of confidence at second grade level. Till date, I remember her. She would always tell me, "Don't look down, Mr. Goenka. Don't look down and walk. Please look up. Nothing's wrong. Things will work out. You need to look up and walk." And I thought that memory of hers is etched deep in my psyche. And she would always reiterate that. She passed away a few years ago, but had a very profound impact on my life.
Often the people you meet at such a young age have such a seminal impact.
They do.
Our childhoods are very...
And we don't realize it till much later in life. Going, that moment really, really meant something very different to me.
Amazing. Who's your favorite director in Hollywood and Bollywood? Or any other?
Oh, no, absolutely. Look, I think in Hollywood, and it changes, right? I mean, this is such a personal field, but it changes almost everything. But I love the work put out by, of course, Scorsese, but Sam Mendes. Great work, right? Sam Mendes does such amazing, cool work. Quentin Tarantino, great work. Alfonso Cuarón, fantastic work. Bollywood, really love stuff that Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra puts out, Sanjay Leela Bhansali puts out. They're like really cool directors, like directors I'd love to sit with and pick their brains about, what does it mean to do theater, create art, films.
What would you like your legacy to be like?
I think I'd like my legacy to be that of someone who actually inspired and really energized a community for the arts. That is something I constantly find myself trying to work towards, and to be the space for people who don't really get a space, don't get a chance to do things, to help them do that in the world of theater, in the world of performing arts. And
the Junction is a very good symbol for that. What would be your magnum opus, the one play that you're dying to do?
Again, it changes with every season. But there are so many great plays out there, One of the plays that I'm right now eyeing is Ayad Akhtar's Disgraced. It's a lovely story. It's a story I think is so pertinent to the current times. Or David Mamet's Race. Again, a great story. Out of India, Girish Karnad's The Dreams of Tipu Sultan. Superb stories. These would always be plays that I get excited by.
Interesting. Final question. What do you think is the meaning of life?
What do I think is the meaning of life? Wow, that's deep, man.
Well, the rest are not deep.
that takes it to another deeper level. I don't know. I think the meaning to life is to create art, is to be happy, is to be with people you love. That's how I look at it today.
Create art, be happy, be people you love. That's a great meaning to have. Gautam, thank you so much. If people want to find you, connect with you online, or watch one of your plays, where can they do so?
Well, watching one of the plays always happens at the Junction. So the Junction at Al Sarkal Avenue. That's where we are. You can connect with me on Insta or Facebook. What am I on Instagram these days? @Gautam.Goenka.
We'll put the links down.
Put the links down. But yeah, I'm on Insta or I'm on Facebook, at least as of now. And yeah.
Gautam, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure talking to you.